Hello, my name is Matthew Mabrey, and I have completed an action research project for my master's in technology and education through MidAmerica Nazarene University. The name of my action research is The Effect of a Blended Learning Environment on the Level of Motivation, Self-Efficacy, Self-Advocacy, and Achievement of Middle School Students. Now that's quite a mouthful, so I've made this graphic to better explain what I did. You see, a blended learning environment is there in the middle, and those factors around it are the things that I was going to measure to see the effect on my students. Because here's what the deal is. As a middle school teacher, you're under this pressure to really produce students that are achieving at a very high level, regardless of their backgrounds. However, all of us have students that come from a variety of backgrounds and starting places, and then there's extreme diversity within our class, which means you always have some overperforming students, some middle of the road students, and unfortunately quite a few underperforming, struggling students. What are teachers supposed to do with these students? And they're not just any type of students. They're Generation Z students. Students who are constantly entranced by video games and headphones and every new and exciting electronic technological device. So my question was, could I find a method that could really increase student motivation and achievement in my classroom? So I came up with this, the blended learning environment. Now, a blended learning environment does a little bit of everything. See over here on the left, we have the standard traditional classroom. Kids sit in rows, listen to a teacher, deliver direct instruction to them. And over here on the right, we have the stereotypical, 21st century learning. Now, as a teacher, I recognize there's times where I need to do some direct instruction to my students, that is the best mode for them for learning. However, I also recognize a need for students to work collaboratively with technology, to construct their own meaning and to invent and to be creative. And so I thought I'd try a blended learning environment where I use combinations of these two modalities in order to see if I could come up with a best fit for my particular students. Now, blended learning environments, there's lots of shapes to it. You could do a flipped classroom, a flipped mastery classroom. Those are a couple blended learning environments that are really popular nowadays. I designed one that was unique to my needs and my students. And speaking of my students, they are from the suburban Northland of Kansas City. They're in a middle school, primarily of 7th and 8th graders. And I took two of those classes, 42 students total, 22 of which were white and 20 were minority. And so this is the problem as I saw it. My students were performing low on assessments, and particularly a subgroup within those larger classes that I taught. And as I looked at it, I felt like these were the three predominant factors. A lot of these students had a history of failure. A lot of students lacked the ability to approach me and other students to ask questions, and a lot of them just learned at a much slower pace than their peers. So the reason I thought a blended learning environment could address these needs is because I felt like a blended learning environment could help students, there we go. A blended learning environment could help students master their material because they can work at a self-paced instead of a teacher-led pace. And so they would have time to spend on learning those concepts that they were struggling with earlier. Also, they would have more one-on-one time with the teacher because the teacher goes from being the sage on a stage to being a guide on the side. And the students are working more collaboratively with each other. So there would be time for students to have one-on-one moments with the teacher to clarify instructions and to seek out help. Also, in this environment, students get to control the pace of instruction. Because they're not working at the teacher's pace, but at their own pace, they can slow things down or speed things up as they need. So here's what I did. 42 minutes a day for 16 implementation days. Kids get combinations of traditional and direct instructions. The direct instruction that was not delivered traditionally took the form of online modules, YouTube videos. They worked on collaborative research projects. They did traditional labs all over those 18 days. And what I found, I needed to use a Google Form survey before the start in order to see how they were feeling in terms of motivation, self-advocacy, and self-efficacy. And then I'd use the same survey afterwards. Students also took 2 quizzes during the implementation period to test the content knowledge they acquired. And what I did was I compared the scores from that implementation period to the quiz scores to prior to the implementation period to see if there was any positive results. Well, let's talk about what I found. First, the achievement results. Here we have our quiz averages prior to doing the blended learning environment and the quiz averages during the blended learning environment. And as you can see, not a lot of difference to overall students. When I disaggregated the data, however, it looks like a slight increase for the white students and a very slight decrease for minority students. Then in comparing student efficacy results, remember the students took a survey prior to beginning the 16 implementation days and the same survey afterwards. And if you're wondering what the SA, A, NO, D, and SD stand for, SA stands for strongly agree, A stands for agree, no opinion, disagree, or strongly disagree. And as you look at these results, what'll probably jump out to you is a slight increase here for overall students. See how we go from 29 to 32 and 49 to 53 with these numbers dropping? And here you can see when we disaggregate the data to white students, there's a slight increase in the agree column and the no opinion column. And there's also a definitive increase in the minority students, though it is minor, only 1 percentage points and 3 percentage points here. So that's positive. Yay! Yay for student efficacy and feeling more confident about yourself and your ability to accomplish tasks in science. For student motivation, however, there's a slight decline from our pre to our post, though it is minor, only 1 percentage point. And as you look at the disaggregated data, we went up here, but unfortunately down in the agreement column. And over here, for the minority students, we went down in the strongly agree, but up slightly in the agree. So it's sort of all things being equal for the total white and minority students. It's a slight decline, but again, only 1 or 2 percentage points. And finally, for student advocacy results, we're looking at, again, it's sort of a status quo. We have a slight decrease in strongly agree, but constant here. There's the 1% difference here. The numbers stay the same for white, for strongly agree and agree. And then for minority, basically staying the same. So when all of these results are calculated, you can see a trend is that it's fairly negligible, the effects of a blended learning environment on all 4 of those factors. I really wish it was different. I went into this action research hoping that I was going to show that this was an amazing method that everyone wants to replicate. But unfortunately, the data didn't just turn out that way. However, when I was analyzing the data, I felt like, there were some validity issues going on here. I only had 42 students participate. And of those 42 students participating, we really didn't collect that many sets of data. There was only 2 quizzes that my students took, and they only did 1 pre and post survey. And if you've ever taught middle school students, you know how incredibly fickle they can be. If so-and-so broke up with me that morning, I may hate life and hate school, even though on every other day I like science. Or if the cafeteria had cherry Pop-Tarts in the morning, and I'm just having an amazing cherry Pop-Tart day, maybe I'm enjoying science a bit more on the day we take Mr. Mabrey's survey, all because of cherry Pop-Tarts. And so I think, ideally, I would like to collect more data to be more definitive about the negligible effects of a blended learning environment for middle school students. And what was also nice was to realize, my goodness, look at these high numbers. 78% self-efficacy, 89% motivation, 79% self-advocacy. My students are rocking it already. I wish I could take credit for it, but honestly, they probably just came to me that way because they are awesome kids. So what I plan to do in the meantime is I want to keep doing this research, collect more data points with new students over an entire year so I get more quizzes and more students. And I also want to check in with other blended learning environment teachers. I know they're out there in my district, and I know there's a couple in my school. It's just the school year's been so busy. I haven't been able to talk with them about what they do and what's been working and what hasn't been working. I am also a part of a Excuse me. I'm also a part of a technology integration committee, and so I'm hoping to share the results with them about what I found. And what we're trying to do for next year is to develop professional development for teachers within the building. That's not good. For teachers within the building who want to initiate a blended learning environment in their classroom and who are also planning or trying to think about what they're going to do with a one-to-one initiative coming down our pipeline in the next 2 to 3 years. And so those are some things I'm excited about doing as I continue my research in my classroom. And what's nice to know is at the end of this all, it really wasn't that bad. And I could see the value of doing it for myself because I got to see how those initial high levels for my students, and I could have sworn to you this was going to be positive versus negligible. And so it was cool for me to see that, wow, maybe it didn't have as great effect as I thought. What can I tweak? What can I do differently? And so I'm planning to do other things of this sort in the future for action research because I realized, it's not really near as hard as I thought it was going to be. So thank you, Dr. Waggoner, and thank you, MNU, for pushing me to do this. I think it's probably made me a better teacher, and I've really enjoyed the process.